Hey everyone, welcome to Hit the Apex podcast this week. I'm Jawad as always, and thank you for joining me. We are close to the final F1 race of the season. I know it's a sad time of the year where we're all sort of in reflection over how the year has gone as far as motorsport and stuff is concerned. We'll leave all the other bits of life at the door. But yeah, here we are at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix for the final race of the year. 21 races. It's been a long season, but then in some ways it feels like it was only just um, like yesterday that we started the year at Albert Park and at the Australian Grand Prix. So, going to preview the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix for you. We've got Supercars to talk about as well, Newcastle 500, talking points from there. Also, just quick MotoGP line, and also Formula E after last week, our chat with Dino from the Regen podcast. We've got into Formula E for this season, the two races in Saudi Arabia last weekend. So, going to do a quick summary of that. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get to watch them live as I was out of town. I was up in Sydney for the weekend, inhaling a whole bunch of smoke, and that's why I still sound a bit nasally. I've got a blocked nose at the moment. So, lovely weather we're having here in Australia. Can't complain about that at all. You can just detect the sarcasm in my voice. And then since I've come back, there's been some personal stuff I've been dealing with too. So I haven't had a chance to really sit down and watch those replays. I've seen a few little highlights packages, but yeah, haven't seen the races proper. But great way to start the season for Formula E, and they won't be back till the new year anyway. So without further ado, let's go straight into the F1 and Abu Dhabi. Favourite of mine, I guess, for personal reasons. I went there in 2014 for the final, even though it was a bit of a washover. It was still a great experience being there. You got Ferrari World as well. If you haven't been, check out. It's an impressive facility. Go-karts as well on site, so plenty to do. Good weather, even though if you're a fan of the heat, but if not, then you might not want to go to this race. It does cool down though overnight, so when they actually do the race itself, the temperature starts to go down. It's the finale in the twilight, of course, with the race starting at around 5 o'clock local or 6, I forgot when it was. But it's going to be a midnight screening here for us on the east coast of Australia. Championships are already decided, as we already know, but the minor placings, I guess, are at stake. 11 points between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc for third in the Drivers' Championship. So, you could have a whole other podcast talking about who's had the better season. Verstappen, 3 wins, of course, fairy tale season for Honda with their first year powering Red Bull, and they've achieved 3 victories together, which has been quite the story for this year. A number of podiums as well. Hasn't come without its down moments at times, but overall they've had a good year. Leclerc as well, 6 pole positions. He's been the pole position master for 2019. He's got 2 wins under his belt. Could have been more though, if you hadn't had those incidents happen. I guess Singapore, Russia as well, and then recently missed out on a podium in Brazil. Possibly a podium in Brazil with what do you call it, the implosion, I guess, happening inside Ferrari there with Vettel and Leclerc coming together. So, yeah, both have had pretty, you could say, successful seasons, but it could have been better for Ferrari and for Leclerc. So, may the best driver win in that instance. But when you look at the overall race, or for the race win, I should say, Mercedes undefeated in the hybrid era. Both Bottas and Lewis Hamilton have wins here. Of course, Hamilton winning last year, Bottas the year before. So, between, the winners, so we've been coming here for a decade now. 2009 was the first race in Abu Dhabi. Only Red Bull, McLaren and Mercedes and Lotus, of course, with their 2012 win with Kimi Raikkonen, have won here. So no wins for Ferrari at all in Abu Dhabi, and that's kind of ironic when they've got their own theme park just next door as well. So, what's going to be the story for them this weekend. You know, they were in the spotlight after the implosion that happened in Brazil. Internal peace talks. Both drivers had to go to the factory and apologise, of course, in front of all the staff. What's going to happen though? You know, are they going to sort of be subdued this weekend? How about the car form as well? Because we know in qualifying they can be quick, but then in the race they've got no race pace, especially, you know, long stints, you know, on the harder compound tyres. It's just not working for them. So this will be an interesting weekend to see or to gauge how they end the year, because, you know, here we were at the start of the year, pre-season, expecting them to be in the championship hunt with Mercedes, but it didn't really eventuate. Then, second half of the year, we get to Spa, Monza, Singapore. They're really strong, but then, you know, that was it. After that, they were still claiming pole positions, but just capitulated in the races. So, you know, they want to end the season on the high. Vettel, I'm sure, does. He's got one win under his belt. Leclerc, with his 2 wins, would like to make it 3. Should already be 3, but, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Always nice thinking in hindsight, but it's in reality, it's not really the right thing. So those guys will be looking for a good result. Red Bull have been quite strong here as well. You know, they've won here in the past with Sebastian Vettel. I always think back to 2012, his drive from the pit lane to come back and finish on the podium, especially with the championship on the line too. And back then Abu Dhabi, of course, was the penultimate race of the season, and Brazil was the final. So, you know, a few people coming out of the woodwork and talking about what should be the final race of the year. I personally don't mind seeing Abu Dhabi there. It's a nice, you know, nice enough venue. It always gets big crowds. I got an email earlier this week saying that all the tickets have been sold out for grandstands, so that's always good sign. A lot of people travel over there for it. So, you know, I've got no qualms about Abu Dhabi holding the final race of the year at all, and it's kind of nice, you know, a bit of a party atmosphere, you know, once the race is over, and even during the weekend with all the fans and everyone around. So really, it's just hard to look beyond Mercedes for the win with their recent form here. Of course, they had a bit of an off weekend in Brazil, and Toto Wolff wasn't there, the team principal. It was all left for James Allison to run over the weekend, so probably not the most smoothest. I'm sure, you know, Allison will, if ever in that role again, you know, will learn and grow as you do as humans, but with the guidance of Toto Wolff back this weekend, should be good for Mercedes, and it wouldn't be surprising if they end the year 1-2 as they started the year. So we'll wait and see what happens there. So looking beyond the top 3 positions, or, you know, just the, you know, top runners in the race as always, you got Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly fighting for P6 in the championship, of course. You know, they're tied on points at the moment with 95. Sainz has had an absolutely incredible year with McLaren, of course, and McLaren, who've sealed out 4th in the Constructors' Championship for the first time since 2014. And, of course, they got that podium in Brazil. You know, you forget about that, you know, even though he didn't get to stand on the podium during the ceremony. Sainz claimed P3, so McLaren's first podium, of course, since 2014. Pierre Gasly also on the podium in Brazil, so he's up there with Sainz, and Alex Albon only 11 points behind those guys too, so if he has a really good weekend, he could leapfrog them all and finish in P6. But, you know, again, with the hindsight, if he had that podium in Brazil, you know, he could have easily been in that position now. So, you know, and that's not saying that Albon hasn't had a great year. He's had an astonishing year, and that podium would have been the icing on the cake, but unfortunately it didn't eventuate with that late collision with Lewis Hamilton. Looking elsewhere as well, you know, Constructors' Championship is still positions you've got up for grabs. So 8 points between Renault and Toro Rosso for 5th, and then you've got 10 points between Racing Point and Alfa Romeo for 7th as well. And Alfa getting a big haul of points in Brazil, you know, with the penalties and whatnot that were applied later in the race, or after the race, I should say. So those guys are back within touching distance. And, both teams have had their ups and downs this year. Racing Point, of course, we've said all along, have had legacy issues from last year, with the financial problems. But heading into the future, those guys should be ones to look out for next year. Alfa Romeo as well, the second half of the season has been pretty bleak apart from the results in Brazil. That'll flatter them a little bit. But otherwise, both fighting for positions, I guess, normally that they wouldn't. You'd expect those guys to be a bit further up. But such is the competitive nature of the midfield that, you could be, one year you could be finishing fourth, and then the next year you could be finishing fifth or sixth or seventh. And just ask Renault that, I guess, who were aiming to finish fourth this year and by a country mile too. And here McLaren have come out, their customer as well, and beaten them fair and square. So that's that. You've also got the final race for Nico Hulkenberg as well. Of course, looking to go out on a high with Renault last year. He crashed out on the first lap and he was hanging like a cow, he said, when the car was upside down. So thankfully he was unharmed in that incident, and I guess they won't be looking for a repeat this year. And then you can look, I guess, back in reflection as well about Hulkenberg's career. So, last time out in Brazil, you look back at how Brazil's been a happy hunting ground for him. Of course, his one and only pole position back in 2010 in his maiden season, and then of course 2012 when he was leading the race for Force India but crashed with Lewis Hamilton could have been a win for him as well. And where would that have taken him if he had won that race? So I know I'm, looking at a lot of things in hindsight at the moment, but it's been one of those weeks, so let me have it, please, I guess so. So, yeah, whether, Hulkenberg will make it back to F1 now. So, there's only one seat left on the grid at Williams. That's not going to be his. It'll probably go to Nicholas Latifi, most likely. So, is this it? Will this be the final race for Hulkenberg in F1, and will we ever see him back again? Possibly, that's the possibility. So, I guess you just have to look back and say it's a Formula One career that's been kind of unfulfilled, really. When you look at his other achievements, especially winning Le Mans as well, and a lot of the junior Formula stuff he's done, it just doesn't add up. But such is life, such is the nature of the beast, I guess. So, we'll farewell Hulkenberg at the end of the race on Sunday. We'll also farewell Robert Kubica as well, who's come back to Formula One, I guess, wasn't the fairy tale that we all had hoped for, and perhaps, in a way it's kind of damaged his career a little bit, because there was all this expectations. But I wouldn't say that. That's a bit unfair. I think we need to applaud the fact that Kubica made it back to Formula One in the first place, made it back to top flight motorsport, given the injuries that he did have after that rally crash in 2011. So, that's all I can say in reflection for Robert, is that it's been great to see him back, and just unfortunate not in the circumstances that he would like or the fans would like either, because I know there are a lot of Robert Kubica fans out there, so they'll be hoping to see him go out on a high if possible this weekend. One of the chances also for his teammate George Russell to score in the final race, score some points, that is. He's the only driver without points this year, so that'll be interesting to see. I don't think Williams will be anywhere up there, unless, of course, 10 cars decide to crash out, and then possibly they can score some points, or, they really engineer themselves, or strategically they get up there. Pace-wise, they don't have it compared to the rest, so I wouldn't bet my house on it or put a mortgage on it or anything like that. So, but the thought is there. If he can score that point, that would be fantastic for him, and that would also mean that all the drivers this year have scored points too. Also had the news during the week as well that Honda will be powering Red Bull and Toro Rosso through to 2021, so that's good for those guys. Shows Honda's commitment as well, but then, they have come out and said that, if the cost of winning is too much for them, then they'll pull out. Obviously they've got to consider these things in the current Sorry, I just had to blow my nose. Can't even speak properly with all this stuffiness. But yeah, going back to Honda recommitting themselves to Red Bull and Toro Rosso. So, it wouldn't surprise me when they stop, or if a manufacturer pulls out, given the current climate financially, and also whether it's in line with their company direction. But with the way the regulations are framed, and also Formula One's commitment to go on carbon neutral by 2030, I think they will stay on. Obviously, it just depends on their relationship with Red Bull and Toro Rosso. We know that Red Bull can be a prickly customer when it comes to performance, and if they're not getting that performance, then we've all seen what they've done with Renault in the past. And then of course Honda. Then the Honda are no strangers to that sort of stuff either, with their relationship with McLaren breaking down pretty severely as well over the few years that they were together. So a lot to play out, I guess. We've still got looking ahead to 2021. I guess we've still got a whole year to go and a whole another championship to go. So we'll tick that box when we get there, but it's exciting to see all the pieces falling into place for 2021. All that remains, I guess, is the commercial agreement and the Concord, to see who commits, who doesn't, what will the terms be and everything, because that's going to be quite significant now. So let's go on to Supercars now. Before I have to blow my nose again. Newcastle 500, of course, final event of the year. Both races, as I guess this back part of the season, were dominated by the Red Bull Holden Racing Team Triple Eight there. Shane Van Gisbergen winning in dominant fashion on Saturday, and then of course Jamie Whincup dominating race 32, and with a bit of strategy helping him get to the front as well. So that team's been dominant since Gold Coast, and I guess we'll talk a bit more in depth at the end of the year about how perhaps all the parity changes and what's gone on throughout the year might have influenced this. But Gold Coast saw the start of Red Bull's domination. They won both races there. 7 victories, including the 2 qualifying races as well at Sandown, which got included in the race results, and points were given. So that's 7 wins in a row, which is I guess back to old ways for those guys, because they've been a pretty dominant team in the past. But it wasn't enough for them to take out the team's championship, which DGR Team Penske did. You could say, in hindsight, if Jamie Whincup didn't make that mistake in race 31 and cost himself a podium, and also the Van Gisbergen grid penalty on Sunday after he was caught impeding in qualifying, having to then race from the back to the front, it could have possibly been there for them. But it was 155 points that separated both the teams, and it kind of rounds out a pretty strong year for the Penske guys. Dick Johnson Racing also. So both cars, Shell V-Power cars, were on the podium in race 31 on Saturday, and then we had Fabian Coulthard finishing second on Sunday. So good weekend for Fabs, who hadn't been on the podium since, I think, Townsville or something like that. So long time between drinks for him. But there's another storyline we can talk about in a whole other podcast, and I will this year do that when we look at the end of year reviews. Is that they've been a great team all year, have Dick Johnson Racing, DGR Team Penske, but unfortunately the Bathurst controversy is going to put a little asterisk against their name for whenever we look back at this year. People only will remember that they were caught cheating, caught manipulating team orders in that race to win, and of course what happened with Scotty's engine as well on the Saturday in qualifying. But they'll overlook that, right throughout the year they've been the better team. They've been better in the pit stops. They've had the better qualifying pace compared to everyone. New Ford Mustang has been totally in their court. They've had the advantage with that, and of course, with the switch to linear springs as well, they've been the better team that have adapted them. So that'll all be overlooked, and unfortunately it'll be Bathurst that will be looked at as the big ink blot on 2019. But you look at the achievements this year for them, so 20 wins in total, 18 of them going to Scott. He won. He was the first driver to win the Darwin Triple Crown. He won Bathurst. He won the championship this year. Ford of the Manufacturers Championship. They wrapped that up ages and ages ago. And also they've got the Teams Championship under their belt as well. So completing the Triple Crown, as you could say, for Supercars, Manufacturers title, Teams Championship and Drivers Championship as well. So it's been a stellar year for those guys, and whether you want to take it away from them or not, it's there, but you can debate it plenty, I'm sure, and I will talk about it in a bit more depth in a few weeks' time. Also had it was an emotional weekend, I guess, because of it's the end of the year, but then also a lot of change coming in for 2020 when you've got drivers moving camps, you've got drivers leaving, quitting the sport. We had Tim Slade finish third in the final race on Sunday and announced after that was his final race for Brad Jones Racing. So a bit of an emotional farewell for him to actually score a podium as well in his final race. It was kind of speculated over the last few months that he might not continue on with that team. He's been there for 4 years. He won 2 races with them, of course, back-to-back wins in Winton. But it's Todd Hazelwood who will be taking over in that Freightliner car from next year. That's already been confirmed. As for Slade's future, it's unknown at the moment. Possibly could end up at Matt Stone Racing in the second car, because they've got 2 cars next year. Of course, Gary Jacobson to possibly be the main driver or land one of the seats there at Matt Stone Racing. We also had the confirmation that Chaz Mostert, who finished 5th in the championship, will be going to Walkinshaw and Andretti United next year. So that was confirmed Monday morning. Or if you want to believe Sunday, when his Super Cheap Auto mechanics actually put him on a trolley and wheeled him into the Walkinshaw garage. That was, I think, what sort of, if you didn't believe the news already, that, or the rumours that he would be making the switch next year to Holden, that kind of just, hit the nail on the head and confirmed it for everyone. So that's all done and out of the way finally, which is good, because it means we can look at who's going to get the second seat, most likely Bryce Fullwood, it seems, which will be good for him. His graduation into the main game, of course, after winning the Super 2 Championship this year. And then, of course, Jack LeBrock has been already announced to take Mostert's place at Tickford, and also continuing the Super Cheap Auto backing that they've had on that car for quite a number of years now. So that's all good to hear. And for LeBrock as well, a bit of a homecoming, because he won his championship in a Tickford car in Super 2 all those years ago. So he's already familiar with that team, and it should be a good fit. And we also had Lee Holdsworth confirmed as well, again on a multi-year deal, which is good for Lee, and to get that podium in Sandown as well, a big relief for him. And coming back to emotional farewells and everything, I think there was no more an emotional farewell, in my opinion anyway, than at Walkinshaw and Andretti United, with both drivers moving on at the end of this year. So Scott Pye and James Courtney together. Pye, I guess, I'm a big fan of Pye's personally, and he's always ended up on the wrong end of the stick when it comes to decisions made by teams, and he's always not had the rub of the green. But he's taken his future into his own hands, and he's announced already that he's off to Team 18 next year, which is good, and he believes that they're going to be strong. But for his weekend in Newcastle, ended up in hospital on Friday with a stomach bug, and came back on Saturday, crashed in qualifying, but finished 6th in the first race from 24th. He passed the likes of Whincup and Courtney as well in the final stages of the race, but believed that past those guys. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was going to say he believed double stacking cost himself a podium, but that was in the race 32 on Sunday that happened, when he finished 5th. So for finishing 6th on Saturday, passing the likes of Courtney and Whincup at the end of the race, coming out of hospital with a stomach bug, that was just great stuff. And, Pye I believe he's so underrated as a driver, because, he gets the job done. He's been at two big teams now where, he's got a wealth of experience under his belt. And I'm sure, when it comes to setup and stuff, Mark Winterbottom, his new teammates, already said that when they were both driving forwards, when Winterbottom was at Tickford and also Pye at DJR, that looking at Pye's data, he was quite impressed with, the setup direction and all that sort of stuff that was going on his side of the garage. So, and when you look at Pye's achievements, he's the most recent winner for Walkinshaw as well at the Australian Grand Prix last year, famous victory under lights, and then of course back-to-back Bathurst podiums in 2017 and 18 with Warren Luff. There'll be famous podiums, I'm sure, that we'll look back on, but hopefully for Pye heading into the future, next year can be a successful one. And, he's already said that he's targeting finishing top 10 in the championship, which will mean that there'll be consistent podiums. I hope so too, for not only him but also for Winterbottom, who's done a great job this year with the change in that team that they've had and the engineering direction that they're going in. So that'll be exciting for them. And quickly with the engineering side of things as well, so Mostert will be taking his engineer Adam DeBore with him to Walkinshaw, so that partnership will continue. And I talk a lot about how drivers and engineers have special relationships, and with with the Red Bull guys, you've got Grant McPherson, who's been there for some time. He used to be with Craig Lowndes, but over with Shane Van Gisbergen now, and then Dave Couchy with Jamie Whincup, also at at DGR Team Penske. Ludo Lacroix with Scott has been a pretty significant combination. And then when Phil Keane was engineer to Fabian Coulthard a couple of years ago, or when they were together at Brad Jones Racing as well, they were quite successful. So having that right partnership with your engineer is quite crucial too. You look at it in MotoGP and in Formula One as well. It's pretty significant. When Lewis Hamilton didn't have Peter Boddington, his longtime engineer at Mercedes, for a race this year, it was a bit troublesome for Hamilton, of course. So, and in MotoGP, it's quite important too. I always think to Valentino Rossi's relationship with Jeremy Burgess for all those years that they were winning together. So it is quite important, and Mostert and DeBore are no different either. They've had a pretty successful combination over the years, and it'll be good to see those guys together, and just shows how serious Walkinshaw are. Walkinshaw and Andretti United, I should say, that they want to win. They think that they've got the right person in Mostert with his engineer to make a difference, and hopefully as soon as next year, because it would be nice to see that team on top again, especially with Triple Eight being the benchmark Holden team at the moment. Erebus have been on the rise too, probably not the year that we would have expected from them, but we need to see Walkinshaw back up there too, which would be great. So that's them. GRM's final weekend as well in Supercars. It was an emotional one for those guys, and pair of top 16 finishes for Richie Stanaway, P20 and P22 for James Golding, of course, as well. Golding's future at the moment in Supercars a bit hazy. Don't know what's happening yet, but he is a solid driver, and if he does land a seat on the grid, then that'll be really good. But he is locked in to do Super 5000 or S5000 and TCR with GRM anyway next year. I don't know about TCR, but S5000 he's doing, I'm pretty sure, so that's good for Golding. He's been solid in his time in Supercars. Richie Stanaway made the announcement on his Instagram as well Sunday after the race that he is going to be hanging up the helmet and retiring from racing. And I know that sounds really weird given how young he is, but it's been a troublesome year for young Richie, and also, the back injury that he sustained this year. And of course, he broke his back a few years ago racing at Spa, and I think GP3 or GP2 at the time. So that's a bit lingering, I guess, and his Supercars career really didn't go the way he would have wanted it to. 2 years with or a year with Tickford last year, that wasn't that great, and then this year with GRM wasn't all that it lived up to, or was going to be lived up to be. So he's making the decision to pull the plug and go after other opportunities. And I got to say, Richie Stanaway cops a lot of flack, I guess, but people don't understand how successful a driver he has been in his young career, overseas. He's the GP2 race winner, GP3 race winner. He's a class winner in a World Endurance Championship race with Aston Martin, the factory Aston Martin team in the GTE Pro class. So he's done quite a fair bit, and of course he won the Sandown 500 with Cam Waters back in 2017. He won his first weekend in Super 2 that year as well at Sydney Motorsport Park. So it's not like he's forgotten how to drive, but he's just not really had the best direction or, engineering direction or best car available to him when it came to being a full-time driver and having his own car. So that's a bit unfortunate, I guess, for how that's all ended for Stanaway, but I wish all the best for him in the future with whatever his plans are to do. Also farewelling Supercars, Simona Di Silvestro as well, finishing 19th and 18th on the weekend. P7 at Pukekohe was her best result this year and also best career result, so a bit sad to see her go as well after a kind of not the most successful stint with Nissan Motorsport and the Kellys. They've had their issues with performance over the last few years or for their entire tenure, because this was also the final race in Supercars for the Nissan Altima, with Kelly Racing switching over to the Ford Mustang next year and also just scaling back to 2 cars from the 4 that they had. So sad to see Simona go, but it will be exciting if she gets some Enduro Cup opportunities next year, hopefully with a top team. We've had Luke Youlden announce that he's retiring from Supercars altogether now at the end of this year. So he was David Reynolds' co-driver. They won Bathurst together, that famous race in 2017. So perhaps an opportunity at Erebus for Simona to get herself into a top flight seat that could possibly yield wins in the Enduro Cup. A Bathurst win, that would be great to see her do that, but she's off to Formula E now to be the Porsche test and reserve driver, so that's very exciting too for those guys. And then, of course, the final race for the Nissan Altima, the final race for the Nissan Altima as well, and that car will be retired, will be still in Super 2, you can see it in that, but as far as Supercars is concerned, that's it. So that's that for the Newcastle 500 then this year, and we'll be back to do the review for the whole year later on. I'm not sure if I'll do a standalone Supercars one or twin it with MotoGP, but we'll see when the time comes. So and speaking of MotoGP, just quick confirmations on the grid. So after the Valencia Grand Prix, we had Alex Marquez confirmed to join his big brother at Repsol Honda. So the 2 Marquez brothers together, which will be interesting to see how they go together next year. Karel Abraham out at Vinci Ducati, unfortunate for him, but could that be an opportunity for Johan Zarco to end up on the grid in the MotoGP class next year and also into the Ducati stable? He was impressive on the LCR Honda this year, but of course missed out on the factory Honda gig to Alex Marquez. So let's cap it off with Formula E then this week. The Diriyah E Prix. I was out of town, as I said, and had stuff going on, so I haven't had a chance to watch the full race replays, but I'm really surprised and also pleased to see Porsche and Mercedes get podiums in the first race of the season. A bit of a crazy race, and dual podiums in the end for Stoffel Van Dorn. So on the podium on Sunday, he was promoted after Maxi Gunter got a penalty. He finished P2, so which would have been a 1-2 finish for the BMW Andretti team, but he was penalised for passing Lucas Di Grassi and Stoffel Van Dorn under the safety car in that second race. Alexander Sims, one lap wonder, you could say. He claimed both pole positions, I should say, and then also won the race on Sunday. So, are those guys going to be a threat this year? We didn't really talk about them as being a threat on the podcast last week, me and Dino, but perhaps, it's going to be one of those years where 9 different winners might win or something like that, and Sims is just one of them. So it's exciting to see Andre Lotterer on the podium, of course, with Porsche in the first race. I guess a bit flattering given that we don't expect them to be serious contenders this year, but they've got that podium out of the way. And Stoffel Van Dorn again, just showcasing how incredible a driver he is, and it was interesting to see him come out and say during the week after the race that he'd definitely not look at going back to Formula One given the political environment. He also called out McLaren for how they favoured Fernando Alonso with upgrades and stuff like that when they were together at the team. So, not no acrimony there at all, you could say. So, it's good to see Stoffel find his home in Formula E, and just goes to show you how good the category is, because it's got some class drivers there like Van Dorn. So we'll see how they go. Great start also for Nick De Vries too. So we'll be looking forward to see how they all go for the rest of the season. And of course, we've got to wait now till January for the next race. So very much at the end of the year, at the end of 2019 for motorsport. And we're going to look back at it all very soon, but we've still got the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix this weekend to run, so going to enjoy that one, and then get to the review stuff in a couple of weeks' time. But as for today, thank you for tuning in. Sorry if I sound a bit nasally. I feel a lot worse than it probably sounds, and I'm just glad I've managed to got through this one today, so hopefully next week we're a bit better and we can review the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and talk about what else is happening in the world. So thank you for joining me as always. Follow us on Twitter, hit the Apex Media, that's the handle. Haven't sorted out anything with Facebook yet, might wait to the new year for that, but Twitter's the go at the moment, so follow us on that. Other than that, thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you guys next week.